more on the budget build-up now. Let's bring in Labor MP Daniel Mulino. He's the chair of the Standing Committee on Economics. Daniel Mulino, thanks for your time. Before we get to the issue around your committee hearings and the issue of productivity, let me ask you about the move on rates. I just spoke to Sherelle Murphy, EY Chief Economist. She thinks there could well be another rate rise next month. What's your thinking?
Well, look, I didn't see yesterday's move coming, and I don't think many people did, so I'm not in the business of trying to predict these things. But look, what I did take out of the RBA's commentary on its move yesterday is that it acknowledged that it thinks, and I think all modellers at the moment think, that inflation has peaked and is now coming down. So that's a good thing. It also said, and I think both of these points are important, that medium-term expectations of inflation remain anchored. So that's important. And it said that wages growth remains consistent with the inflation targeting that it and the government has. So I think that inflation is coming down, and I think that the anchoring of medium-term expectations being consistent is really important.
The Premier in your state, Daniel Andrews, said that he's not sure the RBA is smashing inflation, but they're smashing families. What did you make of that intervention?
Oh, look, I mean, I talk to people in my electorate regularly on these issues, cost of living issues, and a lot of people are doing it tough. And I think that that's reflected in the comments by the Premier and many other people. But I come back to the comments of the Treasurer and the Prime Minister and the Governor, which is that in the medium to long term, we have to deal with inflation, and that things would get worse for people if we don't get rid of inflation. And that's why we, as a government, are putting in place budgetary settings, but also a range of other settings beyond the budget, such as our wages policy, our training policy, and a whole range of measures to deal with supply chain pressures. We need to put in place a bunch of measures that help to deal with inflationary pressures, and certainly not to act in a way that's going to make the RBA's job more difficult.
Well, you've got a lot of pressure coming at you from various quarters. The call for job seeker to be increased, the single parenting payments. There's a lot of demand on the government and the budget at a time when you really can't be putting more heat into the economy. Is there, do you think, still sufficient awareness within the government that you can't be adding to inflation right now?
Oh, look, I think the government's strategy from day one has been built around restraint as one of its core tenets. And that's, I'm sure, going to be, I don't know the details of what's going to be in the budget, but I'm sure that will be reflected in the budget. But again, I would go back to the fact that it's not just the budget. There are other aspects of the government's economic policy. So, for example, the government has pushed for wage rises for those on the lowest incomes from day one. And that was something which the opposition, and when they were in government, said was a poor policy, but it's turned out to be something which was really important. So we pushed for a rise in the minimum wage, which was backed up by the Fair Work Commission. So that's turned out to be a really important cost of living measure for many, many people. We are, of course, indexing a whole raft of payments, which is critically important. And there are going to be a range of cost of living measures in the budget. Now, I don't know the details of those, but you can imagine that they might deal with things like energy prices and other things. So, look, there's all sorts of different levers you can pull. But as you say, you want a suite of policies which aren't going to make inflationary pressures worse, but that do help people.